It looks like markets are trying to go green, but the concern of the CPI data report on Monday might be, I would say, causing a lot of fear for some investors. Check this out. For those that do not know, NASDAQ market, it's pretty much break even, right? It's pretty much in the green. I mean, it's down 0.02%. Markets have been incredibly choppy the past few days, struggling to make new highs because remember, they were pushing for no reason. Yet they're still holding at these levels, even with all the news that came out about tariffs, all this news that came out about uncertainty. Markets were still holding very well. They're very rational. They want to be more bullish than they want to be bearish, right? Sure. The part that I find to be very interesting is that this upcoming Monday, for those that do not know, Tuesday, July 15th, we have our CPI data report that's being released 1 hour before the market opens. So I don't want to go live. If you guys don't want me to, I'll leave it up to you guys. If this video gets over 1,000 likes, I'll host a free live session so we can watch the CPI data report get reported and watch the market react. The thing that I want you to pay attention to is, remember, markets are still bullish because Trump continues to share the idea that his tariffs are not inflationary. And he's handing out these tariffs like Oprah Winfrey. You get a tariff. You get a tariff. I mean, it was just updated. These are the new tariffs that have been shared from Brazil to Canada to Japan, South Korea, whatever it is that has been announced already, right? If inflation begins to uptick, we're currently at 2.4%. If inflation begins to uptick, I'm not here to say that it will. I can't predict the future. I'm not going to pretend like I can. But if inflation comes in higher than what is expected, and it shows that it's not an opinion anymore, it's a fact, right? The Federal Reserve has not been cutting interest rates because they are in fear of these tariffs that can be inflationary. We're currently at 2.4% inflation. And if we begin to see an uptick from what gets reported on Tuesday, and I want to remind you, the way that this is calculated is based off of the last 12 months. When we take away June, and there was no inflation last year in June, and we add anything, our inflation is likely to rise. Based off of my understanding, the overall inflation expectation is expected to rise 0.3%. So if that is the case, if we're taking away nothing and adding 0.3% to our current 2.4%, there's an exact formula behind it, but it's expected to be anywhere from around 2.7 to 2.8% inflation, supporting the case that no, inflation is not going down. And then at that point, I wonder what Trump will begin to say if data does support that, hey, these tariffs are inflationary. And that's based off of expectation. Now, if it comes in lower than expectation, if it comes in flat, then that's a possible win for Trump. And at that point, I feel like the Federal Reserve would be more willing to, cut rates, maybe a quarter of a basis points, the following FOMC rate decision, right? But this is where you're really going to need to pay attention. In my opinion, these inflation reports were not that important based off of recent, months. Now they're beginning to be more important because we're getting to the end of the year. And Trump wants the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. He's begging them. I mean, he's threatening Jerome Powell. He can't do anything about it, but he's threatening Jerome Powell. This is where I believe a lot of the either really good or really bad news can be shared, depending on what side it is that you're on. If inflation does come in lower than what was expected, so let's say that it comes in only at 0.1% or maybe flat, or let's say it loses, right? Let's say it actually saw a decrease in inflation, right? I'm here to lay out all possible outcomes. At that point, if inflation comes in lower than what was expected, that could be good. That could put the Federal Reserve in a position to possibly cut rates. And if they do begin to cut rates, then I do believe that markets can push up to new highs. Because remember, when it's cheaper to borrow money, because that's what pretty much they're going to be controlling, when it's cheaper to borrow money for people like you and I, for Americans, for businesses, and for the United States, they're more likely to spend more money. And by spending more money, you're boosting the economy, right? But if inflation begins to uptick and it comes in as expected or higher than what is expected, then that's the opposite. In my opinion, the news that wasn't impacting the market then or before will begin to impact it now. It will support the case that it doesn't matter what Trump is saying. His opinion no longer holds any merit because now it's showing that his tariffs do cause inflation. And then it's going to be very interesting to see if he resorts to using another scapegoat of, well, now he waited too long, so now inflation is beginning to return. But that's the whole thing that the Federal Reserve has said from the beginning. If Trump didn't come with these tariffs in the very start of the year, they wouldn't have to make these adjustments of being more cautious. But they know that these tariffs, it's not a question. I've ordered packages from overseas and I am made to pay, right? And some of you guys commented this in my previous video acknowledging it, is you are made to pay a tariff or tax to get your package because, again, your sender didn't want to charge you. Now you want your package, so now you're going to have to pay that tariff, that tax. And think about that. Businesses are doing this. They're importing billions of dollars worth of goods and paying billions of dollars worth of tariffs. And that will all eventually get tracked on the CPI data report, right? The inflation report that gets passed down to consumers. So a very interesting week ahead. It's going to be a week where you want to pay attention and to wait for the markets to react. There's no reason to be impulsive. There's no reason to be hopeful. Let's be cool, calm, and collected in a market full of chaos. I'm very excited to see what the market continues to offer. But as of right now, things look bullish. It's going to be very interesting. I'm not here to say, oh, markets have to sell off by the time that the markets close. I want to see. I actually thought the CPI data report was on Monday, but it's not until Tuesday. So I want to see if markets de-risk. So if we begin to see selling pressure into the close today in preparation for the CPI report, because I do believe it's going to be a bigger problem and a bigger issue in the up and coming days. So very excited to follow up. Hope that earned a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. And don't forget, if you ever want to tune on into our live trading session, I trade live every single morning right at market open, and it's designed for complete beginners. So if you're a visual learner and you learn best by watching other people do, it's not meant or designed for you to copy me, but it's for you to understand the thought process behind every trade I take. And if you want to tune in, second link in the description down below. You can join for a little over $1 a day and watch me trade live every single day. I appreciate your time like always. Let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take care, team.